at the outset, I thank you RSSDI for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present my talk and my thoughts on the SGLT2 inhibitors, specifically focusing renal outcomes. Now, uh, uh, we see the basic pathophysiology. Whenever there is diabetes, there is chances of kidney damages are there. So diabetes will primarily cause increase in the plasma glucose. This will also enhance the blood pressure. There will be structural and functional damage to the kidney, and nephropathy, and ultimately proteinuria and the renal problem as well as the CV risk will be high. Now, what are the role? What is the role of kidney as a glucose regulator? We have seen kidney contributing to many other aspects, but what is the role of kidney in the glucose regulation? Now, kidney is very important organ for the gluconeogenesis, that is a glucose release from kidney to the blood. Around 25% of total glucose is released by kidney for the utilization. Glucose utilization for the energy needs is around 10% of dietary resource, and most important is the glucose filtration and reabsorption, that is around 180 gram per day of glucose is daily being absorbed by the kidney. Again, gluconeogenesis is mainly in the cortex, and it is around 10 to 25% of total glucose. Reabsorption of the glucose is around 180 gram. So if GFR is at 125 ml per minute and blood glucose around 90 to 100 milligram per deciliter, around 160 to 180 gram of filtered glucose will be there in the kidney, and nearly all of this will be absorbed by the kidney, and this is the primary contribution in the glucose homeostasis. This is again graph showing glucose urinary glucose excretion, tubular maximum capacity for the glucose, and renal threshold for the glucose excretion. Now, whenever sugar exceeds more than 180 milligram around, then the kidney absorption capacity will be over surpassed by the glucose in the blood, and the glucose will start appearing in the urine. So around tubular 180 to 200 milligram is the renal tubular capacity, and renal threshold is around maximum tubular glomerular capacity is around 375 milligram per minute. TMG is elevated in the poorly controlled diabetes, so that exacerbates hyperglycemia and further damage in the kidney. To achieve this absorption of glucose, we have two kind of SGLT2 and SGLT1. SGLT1 is in the more distal part of kidney, and it is less effective, but affinity is more. And similarly, less affinity and more powerful is SGLT2, which is in the proximal part of S1 part of proximal tubule of the kidney. Right. So yeah. So now, in the summary, role of the glucose is the kidney in the glucose homeostasis is the production of the glucose, glucose utilization, and glucose reabsorption. By the SGLT2 receptor 80 to 90%, and 10 to 20% by SGLT1 receptor. As we all know, diabetes leads to lots of complications, and many cardiorenal comorbidities are there. Around 50 to 60% obesity, 30 to 40% atherosclerotic coronary vascular disease, hypertension 60%, 30 to 4% CKD, 9 to 22% heart failure, all are attributed to the diabetes. And at the time of diagnosis, around 50% of beta cell functions are already gone. So when we came to know about the diagnosis, already 50% of pancreatic beta cell reserve is already gone. Every 3 kg weight gain offsets benefit of 1% of HbA1c reduction in terms of quality of life, purely. This is again data same showing whenever there is a CKD and impaired GFR plus albumin, there is excessive risk for the mortality, around 47%. And also isolated albumin leads to 70.8% and impaired GFR 23%, but together they contribute around 47% to the mortality. Now, what are the current standard of care? At present, we as a nephrologist or as a diabetologist or physician commonly targets our HbA1c around 7. It may vary, but most of the target BP is 130/80. RAS inhibition in form of ACE inhibitor or ARBs when albumin is more than 30 gram per milligram, 30 milligram per gram per the day. And lipid lowering agents which are recommended, but in the stage of dialysis we cannot start it. So risk factors and targets to prevent renal or CV disease are the standard of care. But since many years we do not have any new molecule which really affects the hard points of renal protection. And after many years we got SGLT2 inhibitors. These are very effective across all the spectrum of cardiac, renal, and cerebrovascular disease. So problem with the RAS inhibitor, even after giving the maximum dose of RAS inhibitor, there was residual risk of around 43 to 12 to 43% in various studies. So we needed something more compared to the RAS inhibitor to achieve the clinical beneficial outcomes in the renal patients. So it's a vicious cycle where renal dysfunction leading to the metabolic and cardiometabolic deterioration. There will be increased insulin resistance, increased hypoglycemia. In the kidney, it will lead to hypertension, fluid retention, oxidative stress, arterial calcification, activation of brain and systemic nervous system. Renal abnormalities also affect the ventricular cardiomyopathy, cardiac failure, vascular dysfunction, atherosclerosis. So this is a vicious cycle: metabolic, cardiac, and renal. So now new dimension of targeting, as we know that in diabetes there are lots of things, up to 8 pathological targets are there, pathophysiological. Nowadays focus is more on the renal target, and for that we have SGLT2 inhibitors with us. So SGLT2 inhibitors are two types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is in the intestine as well as kidney, while type 2 only is the kidney. Uh, Role is the renal glucose absorption and renal glucose absorption in the both of them. But SGLT1 also absorb sugar glucose from the food also intestine. So how do SGLT2 inhibitors work? We all know that whatever you take in diet, SGLT2 converts into glucose in the blood. Blood will reach to the kidney, and kidney will to the certain amount up to 180 gram per day will absorb the sugar back, and remaining sugar will be exchanged in the body, in the urine. So around 90% of reabsorption in the by the SGLT2 and 10% by the SGLT1. And normally there is no glucose in the urine. So whenever there is we inhibits by the SGLT2 inhibitors, there will be glucose in the urine, which we call glycosuria. So again same thing, filter glucose load around 180 gram per day. Normally everything will be absorbed by SGLT1, so there is no glucose exit in the urine. What happens in the diabetic? So when the diabetes is there is excessive glucose is being produced more than 180 gram per day, which enhance the capacity of kidney to reabsorb. So urine will be there in the sugar will be there in the urine. So that is glycosuria. So what happens when we treat with the SGLT2 inhibitors? So it will it will not take any glucose in the blood. So all the glucose which comes in the kidney practically will go to the urine, and thus the sugar level will be maintained and the pleiotropic effects will be achieved. Again, this is the renal glucose threshold. By normally it is around 180 milligram. Whenever the diabetes threshold slightly increased to 200, but when we give the first SGLT2 inhibitor in the pink purple sign, purple graph, up to 100 milligram sugar, more than 100 milligram is there in the blood, also starts coming in the urine. What are the effects of various drug classes on the cardiovascular, heart failure, and kidney outcomes? So there are classically class 5 groups which really impacts the kidney outcome: SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP receptor agonists, S inhibitors, ARBs, and statins. Where in the MES group all are effective except ARB, CV death, all are effective, but only empagliflozin is liraglutide in the GLP group is cardioprotective. Heart failure group again SGLT2, ARBs, and S inhibitors are doubtful. Heart renal endpoints mainly two SGLT2 inhibitors and ARBs, others are not there. Albuminuria, all the 5 groups are effective, and all cause mortality, all the groups it reduces. So SGLT2 is endorsed across all the guidelines, as Dr. previous to me has told about the ADA, ESI association. Everybody has recommended that SGLT2 inhibitor should be the first line, or at least after metformin. Again, this is the ADA recent guideline where specific for the kidney, SGLT2 inhibitors or GLP receptor agonists are preferred. Again, it's the same. Our individual goals are less than 6.5% is young and no serious side effect or no risk of hypoglycemia. If patients have risk of hypoglycemia more than 6.5 to 7, targets achieved, then lifestyle modification is first important thing. Even after lifestyle modification changes, there is no improvement in the glycemic control. Then commonly we add other drugs like monotherapy, dual therapy, triple therapy. And if symptoms are there with more than 9 HbA1c, then insulin also one of the option. So again, in the older group, SGLT2 inhibitors are the first or second line, mostly first line therapy. Even in the KDIGO guidelines, what is recommended that we should recommend treating patients with T2 diabetes CKD GFR more than 30 with the SGLT2 inhibitors. Even patients who are meeting individual glycemic target and if not meeting the targets, then SGLT2 inhibitors should be added. But even when they are meeting the criteria of SGLT2 targets are achieved, we have to think whether if we add SGLT2 and targets for lower targets can be achieved, then we should add it, or if not, then discontinue the ongoing drug or decrease the dose for the current medication, and if needed, then add SGLT2 inhibitors. So what are the possible mechanisms? Possible mechanisms are mainly two. SGLT2 inhibition leads to glucose and sodium loss. So that is a glycosuria and natriuresis, and both together will lead to the diuresis. Now, whenever there is a glycosuria, there will be negative calorie balance, there will be reduced body fat mass, there will be less epicardial fat, and there will contribute to cardiac contractility enhancement, and also there will be less inflammation and fibrosis. Similarly, HbA1c reduction will lead to less inflammation and glucose toxicity. All SGLT2 inhibitors are uricosuric. Around 10 to 15% of uric acid is being extra uric acid being excreted by the kidneys. The mechanism being there is a TLV9 receptor which absorbs glucose, and in the distal part of tubule it will secrete the uric acid. So there will be more uricosuric. And reduction in the plasma uric acid will lead to the reduction in the atherosclerosis. There is also decreased blood pressure, that will lead to the rest as that syphilis. Ultimately, this will lead to cardiac and renal protection. Natriuresis is very important. It reduces the blood pressure, it reduces the plasma volume, and most important, there is an increased tubuloglomerular feedback. This will lead to the afferent arterial vasoconstriction, and that will lead to the intraglomerular hypertension reduction as well as less hyperfiltration, and all together will ultimately lead to cardiac and renal protection. So this is the basic mechanism of SGLT2 and SC inhibitors. SGLT2 on the right side affects afferent arteriole, where blood is coming to the glomerulus. So there is a less blood will come in the afferent glomerulus, so there will be less intraglomerular hypertension, less proteinuria. Similarly, ARBs also lead to afferent arterial vasodilatation. Similarly, they are angiotensin 2 commonly constricts the afferent arteriole. When we give this SC inhibitors, they will lead to afferent arterial vasodilatation, and there will be less intraglomerular pressure, and all the protective renal effects will be started. So this figure shows that SC inhibitors and SGLT2 inhibitors are complementary in the mechanism of renal protection and the cardiac protection. So again, this graph showing that SGLT2, whenever we give SGLT2 inhibitors, there will be afferent arterial vasoconstriction compared to inferior arterial. There will be decreased glomerular pressure, reduction in albuminuria. Similarly, in the lower figure, when there is a RAS blockade, there will be efferent arterial vasodilatation, and there is a reduction in the glomerular pressure and the reduction in the albuminuria. So both are complementary mechanism. This is again the potential pathway of renal protective effects, where basically tubuloglomerular feedback will go to the juxtaglomerular cells, and they will enhance the production of adenosine, and there will be afferent arterial vasoconstriction. When the tubular injury markers were analyzed by giving the dapagliflozin, they will be less compared to the placebo. Again, this is the same dapagliflozin at 10 years renal ischemia reperfusion injury. Kidney is a highly metabolic active organ. After heart is the second number in using the oxygen per gram of the tissue. So oxidative metabolism is the principal source of energy in the kidney. They don't use glucose primarily. And the renal cortex uses mainly like lactate, free fatty acids, glutamine, citrate, ketone bodies, and to a very small extent glucose. SGLT2 inhibitors could improve the fuel efficiency, lowering the oxygen requirement, relieving the hypoxic stress, and improving renal function and preventing the progression of CKD. So it is very, very important. Now, there are lots of trials, and most of the trials were designed for the overall. This is a for mesh like outcome, but for the renal specific, there is either end-stage kidney disease where the patient starts going for dialysis or transplantation, or GFR is less than 10 or 15. And second, eGFR based outcomes where kidney function loss defined as a sustained more than 40 to 50% reduction in the GFR compared to the baseline, and sustained GFR less than 10 ml per minute of body surface area. So these are the CKD populations. There are lots of trials have been completed, and one or two trials are ongoing also. And EMPA kidney is very. This is our CKD staging, combining GFR as well the proteinuria. In the right side of graph in the lower bottom is a high risk group where there is less GFR and more microalbuminuria. And based on this. 12 trials have been conducted. Credence trials was conducted around GFR 30 to 90, slightly in the lower risk group. DAPA CKD 25 to 75, EMPA CKD is EMPA kidney is going on, and this results will come by the December 22. Again, the baseline kidney renal characteristics of the RCT is assessing RAS blockade in CKD, as well as the RCT is addressing the RAS inhibitor, SGLT2 inhibitors. In the right side is a GFR, and left side is albumin creatinine ratio. So DAPA CKD was again with the low GFR and more proteinuria. Credence in here to same IDND renal is a pure renal trials. Whether DAPA heart failure, DAPA emperor reduced, declare TIMI, and EMPA-REG canvas all were primarily done in the high GFR. But data were very positive. So all the four large SGLT2 trials where lots of more than 7,000 in the minimum participants, EMPA-REG outcome, canvas, declare TIMI, credence. All the trials have favored SGLT2 compared to the placebo, and this was very common across all the trials. Again, this is the composite endpoint where clinically meaningful kidney outcomes, even studies in patients without diabetes also. So EMPA-REG, canvas, credence, DAPA CKD, declare TIMI, DAPA CV, everywhere data were favoring renal outcome data favoring the SGLT2 inhibitors. Now, first important trial was the credence trial where canagliflozin was compared for the type 2 diabetes and kidney problem, nephropathy. And all across the primary composite outcomes, renal specific composite outcome, end-stage kidney disease, dialysis, kidney death, and the effects were very positive in all the aspects. And it was consistent across all the renal components, including the doubling of creatinine, and hazardous was only 0.6, very less. So in the conclusion, patients with type 2 diabetes and CKD who were treated with SGLT2 inhibitors over and above the RAS inhibitors have lower risk of end-stage kidney disease or doubling of the creatinine or death from the severe renal causes than the randomized to the placebo. This data suggests that SGLT inhibition is an effective treatment option for renal and cardiovascular protection in patients with type 2 diabetes and chronic kidney disease. Again, very important trial was the EMPA-REG, where type 2 diabetes patient with GFR more than 30 were randomized to placebo, EMPA 10 and EMPA 25. Primary outcome were 3-point MASH death from the CVD, non-fatal MI, non-fatal stroke. It was a non-inferiority design, and microvascular and renal consequences specifically noticed. Incident of worsening nephropathy, individual components of the nephropathy like progression to macro, doubling the creatine, GFR less than 45, renal therapy or renal death. So, and again, all the data I will not go and discuss, but very, very positive. I will discuss something related to kidneys only. So, all the data were very positive. Severe and serious adverse effects were very less, and empath and genital infection was the only issue, and hyperkalemia with sometime was the issue. And safety wise, it also better compared to DAPA, where the fracture risk or amputation risk was very high. Now, EMPA resulted patient with already having microalbuminuria regression to normoalbuminuria, 43% chances were there. Similar to patient with already microalbuminuria reduction to normal micro, 82% likelihood with EMPA. Similarly, patient having microalbuminuria reduction with 33%, patient with macro reduction with around 41%. Okay. Now, there again, the GFR was well preserved in the EMPA trial. Again, diabetic patient, it has already shown effective, but there are lots of trials where non-diabetic CKD patients are also getting benefited by the type SGLT2 inhibitors. And one of the important trials is the DAPA CKD trial. Here, around 4,400 patients were with the CKD diabetic as well non-diabetic were included, and again renal endpoints points were be monitored. And up to 14% had GFR less than 25 to 29. That was a very high risk of group for the progression. And so data was significantly well, it prolonged the survival and significantly reduced the risk of kidney failure, heart failure, hospitalization, and severe death in chronic kidney patient. Either diabetes is there or not there. So it was all the Kaplan-Meier graphs were diverging and results were very good. So whether type diabetes was there or not there, whether albumin was there or not there, GFR less than 40, all across the spectrum, data were very good. So again, these are the summary of the many trials where either non-diabetic or diabetic patient both were taken, and they have shown that patient with CKD with SGLT2 across all the group, they have some benefit. So diabetic kidney disease is a common complication with the grim consequences. SGLT2 inhibition shows the cardioprotective beyond their effect on the glucose control, even on the blood pressure. SGLT2 inhibition decreases the afferent arterial tone by impact on the TGF. On a large randomized trial with SGLT2 in diabetic and non-diabetic CKD patient on the RAS blockade have shown that they slow the kidney disease progression, decrease the CV events, and improve the survival independent of the presence of the diabetes. Now the guidelines should be updated to include SGLT as the first step for protective treatment even on the top of RAS blockade. Thank you.